Tom Cruise and his crew do not disappoint at all, and the bar was already set pretty high after 2011's Ghost Protocol. This movie was all action and no holding back. Of course, there were breaks from the action, but the engaging plot kept the movie going. Even though the story may seem a bit complicated at times, the story makes sense and it's easy to follow. There's no filler whatsoever. Nearly every scene had a purpose to progress the story in its 2-hour and 11-minute running time. To give you something about the plot, Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, has been tracking the syndicate, the anti-IMF, for a year, and after a CIA hearing, the IMF has been shut down by the CIA director, played by Alec Baldwin. The shutdown makes it a bit more difficult for Cruise and his group to operate, since the CIA thinks that Cruise is delusional in his search for the syndicate. The beginning scene was why this movie was all action from the start. It doesn't start quietly, and sometimes this could be a sign that this is just a mind-numbing action flick with a lack of intelligence, and it has a simple plot. This is not the case because the plot keeps you guessing, especially this character, played by Rebecca Ferguson. When she fights and does spy stuff, it's believable. She's not some pretty lady who just happens to have these skills. She's a great addition to this movie. Also, the mastermind of the syndicate is calculated and cold, and he caught me by surprise because his voice isn't deep and robust, but it's weak sounding and unintimidating. However, the lack of a strong appearance contrasts with his villainous actions. He plots everything out and seems to be one step ahead of Ethan Hunt. The camera work throughout the action scenes enhances it, especially the motorcycle chase scene. The incoming traffic and evasive maneuvers from the camera using a first-person perspective provides an adrenaline rush. The stunts, chases, and fight scenes keep the heart rate up, and their distribution throughout the movie is even and balanced. It goes from the beginning scene's action sequence to the setup of the next action sequence, and so on and so forth. The pacing is just right, and the movie is neither too fast or too slow. The style, feel, and what people liked from Ghost Protocol are planted into this installment with Christopher McQuarrie's direction and writing. It's better than the parts that I saw from McQuarrie's previous movie, Jack Reacher, since I only caught maybe bits and pieces of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but the familiarity of a franchise makes Rogue Nation easier to take in than Jack Reacher. McQuarrie's action chops from that movie are more refined and in better use here. The reason why I said that about Jack Reacher is because the first impression from Jack Reacher is that this is another action vehicle for a 50-year-old Tom Cruise. Oh, how original. Tom Cruise has appeared in an action film for the last 5 years, starting with 2010 Night and Day, 2011 Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, 2012 Jack Reacher, 2013 Oblivion, 2014, Edge of Tomorrow, and now Rogue Nation. But it's excused in Rogue Nation because of his successes of Ghost Protocol and Edge of Tomorrow. Those were good movies. Rogue Nation stands on its own from Ghost Protocol, and it matches and overcomes it with its mix of espionage and action that's been blended well and perfected this time around. Benji, played by Simon Pegg, is the funniest character. He was the highlight in Ghost Protocol, and he keeps up the comedy with his comic relief and a lack of an action star persona and look in these tense action scenes without being overbearing. He also gets more involved with the action this time around, but he's still not the Ethan Hunt powerhouse. He still has that nerdy computer expert look. Jeremy Renner, who plays Brant, and Ving Rhames, who plays Luther, get overshadowed by Tom Cruise, Simon Pegg, and Rebecca Ferguson, as well as the syndicate mastermind. This isn't a bad thing because it just goes with the movie. They do have their enjoyable moments though, so it's better that the screen time wasn't shared equally. One of my favorite parts about the Ethan Hunt character is that he's funny in an Indiana Jones way, because he has to make spur-of-the-moment decisions that don't always end well, and he also has to fight a taller guy on the stage catwalks in this movie. His facial expressions indicate a humorous vulnerability, since Cruise is only 5'7", It's like the fight scenes from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indy fights a muscular Nazi guy, and where he fights the large Mola Ram slave master in Temple of Doom. According to IMDb, the assassin he's fighting is 6'2.5", so that's a sizable difference. Even at 6 feet, that would be a challenge. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is an enjoyable, solid summer action movie that I definitely recommend. Just like with a lot of action movies, I wouldn't say that you'll remember every part of a movie, but you'll definitely remember the action sequences and funny moments that you liked whenever you watch it again on TV. Just like how it was for me in Ghost Protocol. I wish that it had made more money on its opening weekend, but a $55.5 million weekend is a good, solid weekend. It'll probably make good money in subsequent weeks from the word of mouth. Paramount dodged a bullet by pushing the movie forward to July instead of letting it stand in front of the speeding Force Awakens bullet train on December 25th, which was its original release date. A week after Star Wars, huh? No. Smart move, Paramount.